Hi, everyone. Your favorite international CPA here, James Baker. I have a great call today with Marcus. He's from Germany. He left Germany. I had some questions for him about that, but he had questions. Is New Mexico a great option for an LLC? And he gets into it about these 5472 questions. Like, do I really have to file? Really? And I show him some of the references there. So that's toward the end of the call. Stick to the end and you'll see why you still really have to file this 5472 form. And we talk about the Corporate Transparency Act a little bit at the end as well. So stick to the end if you want to hear all that stuff. It's probably about you. Thank you. Appreciate you being here. Let's go.
Haven't done my taxes, I'm too turned up. Haven't done my taxes, I'm too turned up.
Hey, I'm here now. The other headphones,
Hi.
I plugged into a power outlet that wasn't plugged into the wall, so they never charged.
Oh, okay. So first of all, thanks for having me here. I really like that format. And I think it's a nice win-win situation for both sides.
Yeah, me too.
So,
when I came up with
you.
it, I was like, oh, great. Now I can take all these justify taking calls all the time and helping people out and make it work for everybody.
Yeah, nice idea.
No, so thanks.
Just a warning, I'm a little bit unsure how stable the internet connection is, so I might need to reconnect via cellular phone.
It seems good for now. It seems like the internet's fine. We'll get into it then, because you actually put really good notes here. You have a lot of great questions. So I don't know if you want to just tell me a little bit about what you're doing for business. I see that you're German, right? You left Germany?
Yeah, so actually last year I left Germany. Before I was a more or less former software developer, aka technical consultant. So my main business model was helping my customers to do technical decisions or to adjust software programs according to new regulations or new requirements from their customers or from them. That was my main business. But last year I decided to leave Germany. I canceled my apartment, sold everything. And now actually I'm looking for a new home to reside. But for now I'm more or less traveling.
How does it work in Germany? When you leave, you don't have to pay taxes anymore in Germany?
It's quite complicated. So normally the tax is depend on if you're having a flat, more or less.
If you have tax right. So in Germany, it depends if you actually live there.
Yeah.
So do you need to establish tax residency outside of Germany to stop paying taxes?
Not really. Yeah, it's a little bit, it's a hard topic because there are some extra regulations, especially when you previously have had a company. There are some different states of how you're taxed. So actually, if I'm currently, because I have the citizenship, I'm more or less taxed for income from Germany, more or less. So not for So for example, when you have dividends or bank accounts and these kinds are still taxed in Germany.
Yeah, that's always going to be the case. When you have the biggest example is with like rental real estate. If you have rental real estate, you always pay tax in the country where the real estate is because they have the right to tax you. Those are the easiest examples. But for yourself now, doing consulting income, traveling all over the place, I just didn't know if there was, because in the US you always pay US taxes if you're a citizen. In Canada, they have to do like a formal exit. So they have to file some forms and tell Canada that they're leaving and they're not going to pay taxes as a resident anymore. So I guess they don't have that in Germany. You just leave and stop making German income and then you don't have to pay taxes on it.
Yeah, in Germany, you need to register your place where you live. And when you leave, you need some kind of deregister it.
Okay. Interesting. So how did you deregister? What address did you give them? Like,
they don't need any address. They just ask where you want to go and you can tell them, or you can just say any country and then they just register, okay, he's going to that country, but that's all.
Awesome. So those are for my questions, really. That's what I was most curious about. What's your biggest question that you have?
So actually, one of my former customers reached out to me and asked me if it's possible to do still some business. And yeah, currently I'm looking for a solution to invoice that customer via some kind of an entity. And the US LLC is some kind of possible solution for that.
It's a great solution. That's what I help people with all the time, every day. And that's a great solution. It's still, if you're not doing stuff in the US, it's still a tax-free way to have a company and a bank account in US dollars based in the United States. And it's just a big country in terms of commerce. There's a lot of business done in the US with US companies. So it's people are usually more comfortable paying US companies, and just having the accounts and everything it's a great option. You mentioned on the questions that you want to receive payments via IBAN.
Yeah.
Is that like a wire? I'm like, I don't want to, a risk of sounding stupid.
It's a wire transfer in Europe, more or less.
It's a European, okay, so hold on,
So for example, when you have transfer wires, you get a US bank account with the wiring details, but you also can request a European bank account.
It stands for International Bank Account Number. So it's a wire transfer made from the US to a foreign bank usually. To send money to an IBAN, you need the recipient's account number. Okay, so
it's quite cool because it's quite new. It's about 4 to 5 years, or a little bit older, but you can more or less transfer money inside the EU mostly without any costs. So every bank in Europe has a need to provide you an IBAN, and you can transfer all inside the euro without any further costs, more or less.
Oh yeah, so it's not really for American accounts as much. It's more because we have SWIFT codes and we send wires, which are a little bit different than IBAN transfers. It looks like the US equivalent to like an ACH transfer, where that's like a bank-to-bank transfer.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if US accounts have IBAN numbers, but they can still receive wires from abroad. We have SWIFT codes. But when I send, you're right, I do get an IBAN number when I send wires abroad, but in terms of receiving wires from abroad, I don't know if it's something that is issued or is necessary.
Okay. Yeah, that was more or less a bonus question.
Okay, we went to that first because I jump around to the stuff that since I'm leading the call, I see when I have a question, I'm a pretty curious guy myself.
So actually the plan was form an US LLC. Perhaps in New Mexico, it seems to me the most simplest and cheapest solution for now, because you don't have to file any annual stuff. So just the initial registration. And normally it's mentioned that when you're a foreigner, it doesn't really matter in which state you form your LLC. So I wonder, just to be curious, do you see any downsides in forming a New Mexico LLC?
No, it's like you said, as a foreigner, from a tax perspective, it doesn't really matter. I think New Mexico is a pretty anonymous place anyways, although for you it doesn't really matter, the anonymity as much.
At least I don't care about the anonymity. I just want a simple process, more or less.
Yeah, we usually use Delaware for a long time. I'm starting to use more Wyoming now for a couple different reasons. I'm going to make a separate video about that. Actually, I'm going to make a couple clickbait videos about like where to register your company, because everyone's always searching that. To answer your question, there's nothing wrong with using New Mexico LLC, because like I said, from a tax perspective, it's all the same as long as you're not doing any business in the US.
Okay, do you think regarding the form 5472, it's a problem when I have no real residency? Because I checked the form on the IRS side, and they asking some stuff like where the LLC is taxed, where the person is taxed, what's the foreign tax ID, and all that stuff.
You could put your German tax ID and you could put that you're a German citizen, but in terms of your address and your residence and where you're doing business, you have to pick somewhere. If you don't want to pick Germany, then put somewhere. A lot of my clients like you in Europe that are digital nomads pick a place like Panama and become tax residents of Panama, so that they have like a tax residency that they can fall back on to say, I'm a tax resident here. And then they still continue traveling. They stay in Panama 2 weeks a year. And that's like the extent of that. So if it's not, because in other countries it's required to leave, you have to have a new tax residency.
Yeah.
So that's why people do it that way. It's just an idea, because really from the US side, it doesn't matter that much. It's only from the German side. You don't want to tell the US to tell Germany that you're doing business in Germany when you're not paying taxes in Germany. It could be a disconnect.
Do you know if there's any information exchange regarding this form?
I can't verify. These forms still are filed manually with fax and paper. I imagine out of all the data that the IRS has, it's less shared because it's harder to manipulate and organize and classify without errors. That's just my guess. I imagine you mentioned the Corporate Transparency Act, and I imagine that is, I'm going to make a video about that too. I imagine that is something where the information will probably be shared a little more, but to what end and to what purpose and how it's used, I don't think it's going to be really, it's just so much information. You're a software, a tech guy, so you understand it's just like so much data that it becomes almost useless.
Mm.
The real purpose of all this stuff is to get as anti-money laundering purposes.
Do you know what kind of requirements the address needs to match when you form that for your member? Because yeah, currently it's a little bit problematic because yeah, as I said, I don't have a residency, and more or less I switch my resident address when you would name it that way.
Where are you staying right now?
Every month. In Costa Rica, actually.
Costa Rica is great. Just use an address in Costa Rica.
And do the IRS come back somehow to that? So, for example, when they have questions about the form, do they reach out the LLC address or the personal address?
Oh, you mean the mail? So for my clients, we use our mailing address for the forms, for the company address. And then for the client address, they never mail anything to like the owner or the ultimate owner address. They never mail anything to that person.
Okay. So in general, do they get back to the, so do you know if you formed the form right, or you just never hear from them after you form the form?
Yes, that's exactly right. So we prepare the form, we fax it to them, we get fax confirmation, and we never hear from them again. That's exactly how it works.
Okay.
Only if you do it wrong or they want money is you hear from the IRS.
It's the same in Germany.
Yeah. If you did it right, you don't want to hear from them. If you did it right, then that's it. Sometimes people like to hear they get money back, but usually it's not the case, especially with these forms when it's all informational. They're always either going to want you did it wrong or they need more information.
Okay. So actually, I read a lot of stuff about that form, and so my conclusion more or less is, at least when you form the LLC, you are supposed to form that 5472 because you paid for the foreign entity for registration. That's right, huh? Okay. I'm a little bit curious about how to get money out of that LLC, because more or less it's a pass-through entity, and that transaction would be also reportable. So in the end, it would say that you need to report it every year. Yeah. When you do business.
Basically, everything is a reportable transaction. So it's a form you would have to do every year. I mean, it's the only form you have to do, and you don't have to pay taxes. So it's not that bad. You still, if you're using your company, you're paying for stuff, you're sending money around, you probably have a reportable transaction and a requirement to file. It's very likely, especially if you're doing business.
I don't know if it's a little bit too detailed, but for example, when you pay for the formation and for example, when you take money out of the company, is it reported in the part 4 and 6? Because I saw the instructions from that form, how to file it, and it mentioned there's some part 5, which especially mentioned these kind of transactions. So I wonder if these kind of transactions are reported in separately via this part 5 or in 4 or 6.
Those are, I'll bring the form up for you. Give me a second. You don't really report anything in part 6. So on the form, part 4 is monetary transactions between the related party and the foreign and the reporting corporation, right? And if you have transactions like, usually it's going to be consideration paid for technical services, like it's like management fees or commissions. Most of them is going to be in there, most common lines. Reportable transactions of a reporting corporation that's a foreign-owned U.S. disregarded entity, which it was BU, and then you describe on a separate sheet based on these regulations amount paid or received in connection with the formation, dissolution, acquisition, or disposition of the entity, including contributions and distributions. So you check that and put it on a different sheet.
Because the interesting thing is when you check the instructions for the form, the IRS exclude the entity to file that form if you only have transactions in part 4 or 6.
But yeah, these are December 2019. So let's see, they don't have part 5 on here. Part 6, part 3, part 4, part 5. There you go.
Can you search? Yeah, yeah. Actually, I think it's the same like in the form, but when you search who must file this form.
Oh. It's on like the very first pages. Who must file? Yeah.
Yeah. And if you
this is it. Generally, a reportable corp must file if a reportable transaction with a foreign or domestic related party.
And then there's an exclusion which says, yeah, you don't need the form when you don't have transactions which are put to part 4 or part 6.
Parts 4 or 6. This person controls, if any of the following. Okay. Controls a foreign related corporation. Yeah, so you just see the blank 50% one. Foreign
so
sales
actually,
corp.
So actually, why I'm asking this question is because when you need to file these kind of transactions like forming costs and dispositions in part 5, I wonder if that's an exclusion for filing that form at all. And I'm a little bit unsure because you see so much stuff on the internet and on YouTube, and so sometimes some guys say, okay, you just need the form for the formation and not for distributions.
Here, let's do this. What is a action? Viewer 72, Mata&Baker YouTube. I made a video about this. What is a reportable transaction? And I want to find the code section that I was referencing in this video. Yeah, so this is it. So these was was that in the regulations or the code? Hold on. Oh, I just flipped to the page. So this is 6038A-2. Okay. Requirement of return. So this is the Internal Revenue Code, the law about when a return is required. So the instructions are made to more easily consolidate and explain the Internal Revenue Code. The Internal Revenue Code is explained through the regulations because the code is more brief. The regulations is done by the lawmakers to interpret the code, and then the instructions are like the even more dumbed down version of the regulations. But ultimately, the decisions of whether you do things or not should be referenced into the code sections instead of the instructions. The instructions are good, but if they're unclear or they leave out, you go to the code. Let's see. This is yeah. It says as any. This is it really, and it's pretty clear. It says each reporting corp shall make a separate annual information form. And then that's what this code section I think this one references that a foreign-owned single-member LLC is a corporation for purposes of filing just this form. Has had any reportable transaction during the year. Reportable transactions listed in paragraph B3 and 4 of this section. Okay. If it's effectively connected income, will not generate. Okay. And then this is it. So if the related party is a foreign person, dollar amounts received for the year, if the total is the total of transactions as well as separate amounts of each type.
Okay, I think it's mentioned in part X.
Yeah, and then XI, and then this is the one with regard to entity as a reporting corporation under these regulations, and that's, I don't have to go through the whole separate video, but this is where it references it as a reportable transaction, and this one says that oh yeah, these are foreign related party transactions. Yeah, so those that goes through the maybe there's see there's something in the exceptions. Yeah, they don't have exceptions in here. Okay, a reporting corp is not required if the transaction listed in paragraphs B3 and 3 and 4. So this is 3, and then this would be under 3.
Okay.
So thanks for bringing it up. You almost got, we almost got me. You almost proved everything I said wrong for the whole. Okay, so let's go back and double check it again. Let's go Control F, exceptions.
So I guess the IRS page is some kind of a little bit.
Yeah, let's keep doing it. Let's do it again. The reporting corporation is not required to file if it has no transactions of the types listed in paragraphs B3 and 4 of this section. If it has no transactions of B3, so let's go make sure that's B. A, that's contents of return B, and then 3, yeah. So it's still, this is in B3 for sure. And then 4 also non-monetary less than full. So it's, okay, so if you had no transactions, you don't have to file, is what they're saying. Which is, you're right. I'm glad that you ticked through the instructions so much and you found almost found an exception for a lot of people, because that's most of the requirements of people to file it is that. Let me read this one. Transaction of the corporation subject to reporting under 6038. Okay, so if it's owned by a U.S. person. Okay, so that was good. I'm glad we got to answer that question.
Okay, so I guess one of the last questions would be, so I think you had a video about multi-member LLCs. So just to double check, so when, for example, I would found the LLC with my girlfriend, we wouldn't need to form that 5472.
If you have it with your girlfriend, then you file a 1065, a partnership return.
But actually, you don't need to share any information, if I got it. So it's more like a pro forma.
I've been back and forth on this, and I put out content saying both things because I don't know what to do. Check out the last video I made with Peter Polsen. I put it out a couple days ago. It's a long video, but I think he's a tax attorney, but I think he stopped being an attorney. But in any case, he researches all the time. He's really smart. We talk about this a lot about the filing, and I filed like blank returns before, but now I'm filing them with all the information because in my video when I did the research again, and I have the multi-member LLC master guide, I gotta watch that again, but the way it's set up is that the U.S. partnership has to report everything, and how I understand it, the U.S. partnership reports everything, but a non-resident individual with a K-1 of no U.S. source income and no U.S. trade or business doesn't have to pick up the income from the K-1. So I've been filling out the partnership returns. The risk of doing it blank or full, I don't know. It's a pretty remote risk always of ever having an issue. Whether you want to, if you want to do it by yourself, it's probably easier just to do it blank. If you want to fill it out, if you're going to have someone, pay someone to do it, fill it out the full way. And then you file a blank personal tax return. You wouldn't include any of the income information. So it's something that it's hard for me to give a solid answer on because the guidance isn't there from the IRS. And it's like it's not like a lot of the practical application of the code sections isn't explained, like how to practically disclose things. We're out here just doing our best, trying to do things that make sense and document it the right way. I hope that isn't like too much rambling, and I hope it makes sense.
Yeah, it's okay. Do you have any more information about that Corporate Transparency Act?
No, the law just passed, and they have to finish the final regulations, and they have to like implement it and stuff. So it's not like there's a couple websites about it, but it's really straightforward. I really have to make a video about that because that affects a lot of my clients. But really, every company that's foreign owned has to just register with FinCEN and upload their passport, show what company, the name of their company and what it is, and that's it really. You just have to say who the owner is, where the owner lives, and have some kind of verifying document of who the owner is. It's not changing any of the taxation on anything. It's just the U.S. grabbing more information to do whatever they do with it.
Okay.
Like I said earlier, the main purpose is to fight money laundering and anti-terrorism stuff. They call it money laundering and anti-terrorism things. Terrorist financing, yeah. So that's
okay. So let me quickly review the questions, but I guess we already have done everything. Yeah. I think that's all for now.
Okay, I hope it was helpful. Did you already open the LLC, or are you going to do that still?
Not yet, to be honest, because yeah, normally the way I do things is I gather too much information, and afterwards I think how to do it the best way.
That's why I tell people like yourself, I say always, you sound like you're advancing your career, you're doing your own thing, you're doing great. But I'm always like, just pay someone to do it and then spend that extra time getting more clients, selling more.
Yeah, the problem is how my thinking is working. I want to understand the process, and if I'm paying someone else, normally I don't understand the process.
Understood. And, no disrespect.
Yeah, that's some kind of that.
Those are my favorite clients, are the ones that do most of the research themselves. So the questions are very pointed and direct and usually concise. Those are my favorite clients, the ones that are pretty informed. But yeah, if you have no other questions, I have another guy waiting to talk for my 11:30 call. I know I showed up late to yours, so I took this late. If you have any other questions or need help with anything or whatever, you could always schedule another call via this link, because I think this was a great call for the channel. Hopefully it helps some people. And thanks for showing up. It was nice to meet you, Marcus.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Okay, you too. Bye. So that was a good call with Marcus. He put me to the test. He said, hey, I read this. Why do I still have to file? And I think I was able to go through some of the regulations and the code there. We'll link that. If my team's on it, we'll link that video that I referenced below. What is a reportable transaction? It's an oldie but goodie. It's always good to get into some of the tax code. I know that the Cornell Law School it's probably better to have a paid tax research tool, but for quick references, those work. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to file your 5472. Best of luck to you, Marcus, if you end up watching the video that you were in, and everyone else who's trying to get paid from some other country. Check out, there's a lot of different options for tax residencies and companies, but having that U.S. company and that U.S. bank account is the best way to get paid. Okay, that's how I get paid every day. Thank you so much for being here. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you at the next video. Thanks.